Alright everybody, settle in, grab some popcorn, maybe a tissue or two because we are about to go on a ride. You know, life is funny. We all go through these chapters, especially when it comes to love. It's like a really long movie where you're the star and sometimes you don't know your lines, the script keeps changing and the supporting cast, well, let's just say their motivations can be a little confusing. My love life has been less of a romantic comedy and more of an epic drama series with a lot of plot twists, some questionable character choices, and a whole lot of learning. I've always thought that finding the one was the ultimate goal, you know, that fairy tale ending we see in movies. But what happens when the one turns out to be the one for now, or the one who teaches you a tough lesson? What happens when the path isn't a straight line to a white picket fence, but a winding, confusing, sometimes heartbreaking road with a lot of detours? This isn't just a story about breakups, it's about the journey through them. It's about picking yourself up, dusting yourself off, and realizing that maybe, just maybe, the happy ending looks a little different than you first imagined. So today, I'm opening up my personal diary of heartbreaks. We're gonna talk about everything, from the innocent puppy love days to the complicated, messy adult stuff that nobody gives you a manual for. We're going through 10, yes 10, different chapters of my heart. It's a story about losing love, finding myself, and discovering that the most important relationship is the one you have with yourself. And who knows, maybe by sharing my crazy journey, it'll help you make sense of yours. Let's get into it. Oh, to be in grade 9 again. Everything felt so monumental, didn't it? A pop quiz felt like the end of the world, and your first crush, well, that felt like the beginning of it. That was my unangi case. It was all handwritten letters passed between classes, stolen glances across the classroom, and the thrill of holding hands for the first time. It felt so real, so important, like we had discovered this secret emotion that no one else in the world understood. We were kids playing grown-up, trying to figure out the rules of a game we had only seen in movies. We'd make these grand promises, planning a future that barely extended past the next school dance. But here's the thing about being 14. You're not just figuring out love, you're figuring out who you are. And those two things don't always grow at the same pace. The immaturity was palpable. One day, we were inseparable, the next a silly rumor or a misunderstood joke could cause a week of silent treatment. We were so focused on the idea of being in a relationship that we forgot to actually build one. It was less about deep connection and more about the status of it all. In the end, it fizzled out as quickly as it started, not with a bang, but with the quiet realization that we were just too young to carry the weight of what we thought love was supposed to be. Fast forward to senior high and you think you've got it all figured out, right? You're a little older, a little wiser. Or so you think. My second attempt at this whole love thing was with my senior high crush. This one felt different. It was more mature, or at least I thought it was. We had deeper conversations, shared dreams about college and the future, and it felt like we were on the same page. There was a genuine connection, a spark that went beyond just holding hands. I was all in, picturing us navigating the next chapter of our lives together. This was it, I thought. This is the upgrade from the puppy love phase. But then came a lesson I wasn't prepared for, self-love, and it wasn't mine, it was his. He ended things, not because of a fight or because he found someone else, but because he said he needed to prioritize himself. He needed to figure out who he was before he could be with someone else. At the time, I was devastated. It felt like a rejection, like I wasn't good enough. How can you choose yourself over us? I remember thinking. It was a concept my relationship-focused brain couldn't grasp. Looking back, it was one of the most mature breakups I've ever experienced, even if I couldn't see it then. He chose his own journey, and in doing so, he unknowingly set me on a new path of my own. Then came college. The big leagues. This is where things get complicated. My third relationship felt like the real deal. We were adults, navigating university life, and it felt like we were building something solid. There was passion, there was companionship, and for a while, it felt perfect. We were that campus couple, the one that seemed to have it all together. We studied together, partied together, and talked about a future that felt tangible and real. I let my guard down completely, believing that the lessons from the past had prepared me for this. I was ready for a love that was stable and secure. But there's always a catch, isn't there? Slowly, I started to notice a shadow in our relationship, a presence that wasn't physically there but was emotionally undeniable. A third party. It wasn't a straightforward affair but an emotional entanglement that created a triangle of confusion and hurt. the trust began to erode, replaced by suspicion and late-night arguments that went in circles. When it finally ended, there was no clean break. It was a messy, painful unraveling that left me with more questions than answers. The feelings were never fully resolved, leaving a wound that I would unknowingly carry into my next encounters, a ghost that would haunt me for a long time to come. You'd think after the college disaster I'd be more cautious. You'd think I'd have a PhD in identifying red flags. Well, you'd be wrong. My fourth relationship was like walking into a field of red flags and convincing myself it was just a poppy field. This time the issue wasn't just a third party, it was a fundamental struggle with the very concept of commitment itself. He was charming, exciting, and made me feel like I was the only person in the world when he was with me. But there was always a sense of distance, a part of him that was held back, unavailable. The pattern was maddeningly predictable. We'd have incredible moments of connection, followed by periods of unexplained silence or distance. The third-party issues from my past relationship resurfaced, but this time, they were amplified. It was a cocktail of my unresolved insecurities and his clear inability to commit. Every time I tried to define what we were, he would retreat. I ignored the blaring warning signs, the gut feelings, the advice from friends. I was so determined to make it work, to fix it, that I didn't see I was losing myself in the process. It ended, as it was always going to, leaving me to finally confront the fact that you can't build a future with someone who is only half present. After the red flag parade, I was emotionally exhausted. I stumbled into my fifth relationship almost by accident. He was the complete opposite of what I'd just been through. He was kind, stable, and emotionally available. It felt like a breath of fresh air, a safe harbor after a storm. For the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of peace. This, I told myself, is what a healthy relationship should feel like. He was everything I should have wanted, everything a normal person would want. We were building something gentle and quiet, a stark contrast to the drama I had become so accustomed to. But the heart is a stubborn, illogical thing. As I was trying to build this new, healthy connection, the ghost from my past, the third party from my third relationship, re-emerged. It turned out those unresolved feelings were a two-way street. Suddenly, I was the one caught in the middle. My heart was being pulled in two different directions. On one side, a new, promising love that offered stability. On the other, the magnetic, chaotic pull of a past that was never properly closed. I was torn, consumed by conflicted feelings and guilt. I was trying to be present in my new relationship while secretly being haunted by the what-ifs of the old one. It was an internal battle that I was destined to lose, and it was unfair to everyone involved, especially the good man who deserved more than half of my heart. In the messy aftermath of that emotional tug-of-war, I was adrift. I think a part of me was desperate to prove that I could be in a normal relationship, that I could feel normal feelings again. That's when the sixth chapter began. It was a rebound, though I didn't want to admit it at the time. I met someone new, and in a rush to feel something, to fill the void, I dove in headfirst. I went through the motions, said all the right things, and tried to convince myself that this was real. I wanted it to be real so badly. The pressure, mostly from myself, was immense. I remember the moment clearly. We were having a nice evening and I felt this overwhelming urge to say the three words everyone longs to hear. So I said it, I love you. But as the words left my mouth, they felt hollow, like an echo in an empty room. There was no genuine feeling behind them. I was still completely hung up on the past, on the chaos and the unresolved drama. I was saying I love you to this new person, but my heart was still tangled up with someone else. It was a rushed, forced declaration, and the lack of genuine emotion behind it was a painful realization that I was more lost than I had ever been. This next one, number 7, was less of a chapter and more of a short story. A footnote, really, but even footnotes can be important. After the hollow I love you, I was trying to recalibrate. This relationship was brief, almost fleeting. It started with potential, a glimmer of hope that maybe this time would be different. We had a good rapport, laughed at the same stupid jokes, and for a moment, it felt easy. I thought, okay, maybe this is it, a simple, uncomplicated connection. This is what I need. But those unresolved emotions from the past, they're persistent little things. They don't just disappear because you want them to. The ghost of the third party, the one from chapter 3 and 5, still had a hold on me. Every new memory I tried to make was overshadowed by an old one. Every moment of happiness was tinged with a what if. It wasn't fair to him. He was trying to get to know me, but I was a person half living in the present and half stuck in a loop of past heartache. The relationship was a casualty of my emotional baggage. It ended quickly, a quiet acknowledgement that I couldn't give someone my all when a significant piece of me was still missing, still tied to someone else. Back to college for this next tale of woe. Number 8. This one was different. It wasn't about ghosts or third parties, it was about something much uglier. This relationship was marred by bullying. Not the schoolyard kind, but the subtle, insidious, emotional kind that chips away at your self-worth until you don't recognize yourself anymore. It was a constant cycle of being built up and then torn down, of passive-aggressive comments disguised as jokes, and a general feeling of walking on eggshells. I found myself changing my personality, my interests, my opinions, just to keep the peace. I stayed for far too long, convinced that this was just a difficult phase, that love was supposed to be hard work. I held on to the idea of forever, a concept that had been drilled into my head since I was a kid. But living in that constant state of anxiety and self-doubt was exhausting. The realization didn't come in a sudden flash, but in a slow, painful dawning. This wasn't love. This was control. The final breakup was brutal, but it was also liberating. It was the moment I had to swallow the bitter pill that forever isn't always the goal, especially if it means sacrificing your own happiness and mental well-being. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is to let go of a toxic forever. Alright, so after the emotional gauntlet of the first 8, something had to give. Chapter 9 was the pivot. I call it my Z-axis moment because it took me out of the flat, two-dimensional plane of thinking about relationships and into a whole new dimension. It all started at a party. I met someone and there was that familiar spark, that instant crush feeling. In the past, this would have been the start of a whole new cycle. I would have started daydreaming, planning, and probably getting ready for another inevitable heartbreak. But this time, something was different. As I felt the crush developing, another thought popped into my head, clear as day. Why does this have to be monogamous? It was a lightning bolt. All the pain, the jealousy, the third-party issues, the feeling of not being enough. It all stemmed from this one rigid structure I had been trying to force my life into. For the first time, I didn't see this new person as a potential one and only. I saw them as a person. I stepped back from the emotion and engaged my rational brain. I started thinking, really thinking about what I wanted, not what I was told I should want. It was the beginning of me moving on, not from a person, but from an entire ideology that had caused me so much pain. And that brings us to Chapter 10, the final piece of the puzzle. You might expect some grand dramatic romance to cap it all off, but it was the exact opposite. It was a friend zone. And it was one of the most healing experiences of my life. After my Z-axis revelation, I started a connection with someone that, in the old days, would have been a prime candidate for a relationship, but we consciously decided to keep it in the friend zone. There was attraction, there was a deep connection, but we removed the pressure of romantic expectations. This friendship became my training ground for a new way of relating to people. It helped me practice communicating my needs, setting boundaries, and appreciating a connection for what it was, without needing it to fit into a specific box. It was a relationship built on honesty and mutual respect, free from the jealousy and possessiveness that had plagued my past. It was through this platonic yet deeply intimate connection that I finally, truly started to move on from my monogamous past. It taught me that love and connection can come in many forms, and that the label is far less important than the quality of the bond itself. It was the perfect, gentle end to a decade of romantic chaos. So, there you have it, 10 relationships, 10 heartbreaks, 10 massive life lessons. It's a lot, I know, I should get a t-shirt made. You know, when you look back at a journey like that, it's easy to see it as a series of failures. But it's not. Every single one of those people, every single one of those painful moments, taught me something I desperately needed to learn. It taught me about my own resilience, about my patterns, and about what I truly want and need, not just in a relationship but in life. It's like I was collecting all these ingredients, and for a long time I didn't know what I was cooking, and now I realize I was just learning how to make a meal for myself. And that's the biggest takeaway. This whole journey from that innocent puppy love to questioning the very nature of relationships, it was never really about finding the right person. It was about becoming the right person for me. It was about healing those old wounds and realizing that I am whole all by myself. The shift from monogamy to exploring other relationship styles wasn't about wanting more partners, it was about wanting more honesty, more freedom, and more communication. It was about designing a life that fits me instead of trying to squeeze myself into a life that doesn't. So if you're going through a heartbreak right now, or if you're feeling lost in love, just know that every step is part of the path. Be kind to yourself, learn the lessons, and remember the most incredible, enduring, and important love story you will ever be a part of is the one you have with yourself. And just like I always say, be kind to one another. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you next time.